Have you ever really thought about the food on your plate? I mean, how did that apple from thousands of miles away actually get to your kitchen? Well, its journey is this incredible story of technology, logistics, and, well, power. So today, let's pull back the curtain on our modern food system.
You know, when we think farming, we probably picture something like the image on the left, right? Getting your hands dirty, a real personal connection to the land. But the reality is, most of the food we eat today comes from a world that looks a whole lot more like the picture on the right. Massive, powerful, and totally industrialized. That contrast right there, that's the whole story of modern agriculture.
So, the big question is, how did we get from that small, hands-in-the-soil farm to that gigantic tractor? This massive change, well, it didn't just happen overnight. It was all driven by three absolutely world-changing revolutions in how we make food.
Okay, so let's do a quick trip through time. It all kicks off about 10,000 years ago with the Neolithic Revolution. This is when we humans first figured out farming. Huge, right? Then, fast forward to the 1700s and 1800s, and the Second Agricultural Revolution brings in the machines. But the one that really changed everything? That was the Green Revolution in the 1960s. This was a flat-out explosion of science. We're talking high-yield seeds, new fertilizers. It completely supercharged the world's food supply.
Right, so those revolutions built the incredibly complex global system we have today. And to really get our heads around it, we need to follow the path our food takes, from the farm all the way to our dinner plate. So let's trace that journey by looking at what's called the commodity chain.
The commodity chain. It sounds kind of technical, but think of it like an invisible string. It connects every single step and every single person involved in getting that food to you. It's the entire story, from a coffee farmer in Ethiopia all the way to your morning cup right here.
And we can break this whole journey down into 4 key stages. First, you've got cultivation. Then it moves on to processing. After that, it's all about transportation. And finally, it hits the market, where we all come in. Let's use something like coffee or wheat to see exactly how this whole thing works.
Okay, step 1, cultivation. Obviously, it all starts on a farm somewhere. But where that farm is depends completely on the crop. Coffee, for example, it has to grow in the warm, tropical bean belt. We're talking places like Colombia or Vietnam. But wheat, that thrives in those huge, wide-open, temperate plains you see in places like the US or Ukraine.
Now, once that stuff is harvested, it's not really ready for us to use, right? That brings us to step 2, processing. This is the transformation stage. It's where those coffee cherries get dried and roasted to become the beans we recognize. It's where wheat gets milled into the flour we need for bread. This is where nature gets turned into a product.
And now for step 3, transportation. And honestly, this is where the sheer scale of our food system just becomes mind-boggling. We're talking about a ridiculously complex web of container ships, freight trains, and fleets of trucks that literally crisscross the entire planet to connect the farmer with you and me.
And that leads us to the final step. Step 4, the market. This is the last stop on this epic journey. That bag of coffee or that loaf of bread finally lands on a shelf in your local grocery store, ready for you to grab it and take it home.
So, we've seen the what and the how, but what about the who? Who is actually in the driver's seat of this whole system? Who really owns your dinner? Well, in a word, agribusiness.
Now, agribusiness isn't just a fancy word for farming. It's way bigger than that. It's the whole system, where just a handful of massive corporations control pretty much everything, from the patents on the seeds all the way to the brands you see in the supermarket.
So how did they get so powerful? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is something called economies of scale. And it's actually a pretty simple idea. The bigger you get, the cheaper you can produce stuff. These giant agribusinesses can afford the most advanced tech and operate on a massive scale, which lets them produce way more food for way less money. It gives them a massive, massive advantage.
And the result of that advantage? A really dramatic shift in what farming even looks like. Just look at this trend in the US. The total number of farms has been going way down, but the average size of the farms that are left, it's been skyrocketing. The era of the small family farm, well, it's being replaced by these huge corporate operations.
And the productivity numbers are just staggering. Get this. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, farm output in the U.S. nearly tripled between 1948 and 2019. And they did all that while using less land and less labor. That just shows you the incredible power of this industrial scale model.
There's another really powerful strategy they use, and it's called vertical integration. This is when one single company owns multiple steps of that commodity chain we were talking about. So think about a company that not only grows the corn, but it also owns the factories that turn it into corn syrup, and it owns the trucks that deliver it.
But, it's not all about giant, faceless corporations. Farmers have been using these same strategies to fight back. Take Ocean Spray, for example. That's actually a co-op, owned by the cranberry growers themselves. By banding together and taking control of more of the process, they get to keep more of the profits. It's a pretty smart move. So here we are. We've got more food and cheaper food than at any point in human history. But we have to ask, what's the cost of all this abundance? Because there's a hidden price tag, and it's sparking a huge debate about the entire future of our food.
The pros are pretty obvious, right? We're talking massive harvests and cheaper food, which helps feed a growing world. But the cons? They're really serious. You've got the decline of the small family farm, which changes rural communities forever. And then there's the huge environmental impact. The strain on water and soil, the pollution from chemical runoff. This incredibly productive machine raises some really tough questions about whether it's actually sustainable in the long run.
And in response to all of this, we're seeing this groundswell of consumer-led movements. People are actively looking for alternatives. They're getting into things like urban farming, joining CSAs, buying organic, and really pushing for fair trade and eat local movements. It's all about trying to build a more direct, more conscious connection to where our food is actually coming from.
Which really brings us to the single biggest question hanging over all of this. Our global food system is, without a doubt, a modern marvel. It feeds billions of people every single day. But is it sustainable? Can we keep doing this year after year, decade after decade?
Because in the end, it doesn't matter how advanced our technology gets, how massive the supply chains are, or how powerful the corporations become, the journey of every single bite of food we eat still starts right here. And its future, and ours, depends entirely on the health of this soil.